Welcome back to Unlocked. I am so excited for today because it's been a few weeks since we've actually had a guest on, but I have Doug.
Bopst.
Yep, I can't say it. Bopst.
Bopst.
Okay, I got it. Doug Bopst. And it's actually really awesome how we came in contact. I love coming in contact with people through mutual friends and people just because I don't know. I feel like everything happens for a reason. So when a friend is like, hey, I want to put you in contact with this person, there's some reason behind it.
Same. Yeah. And it's so much easier to have a conversation because there's already a little vetting process that's happened because you're like, I trust this person. So now I'm automatically going to, trust the person they're connecting me with.
Exactly. Which is so awesome. And I did your podcast, which came out today.
Yes.
So today, when we're filming this, which is February 5th. So when you're listening to this, go back and you can find my episode on Doug's podcast, look at the date, February 5th. But your podcast title is?
The Adversity Advantage Podcast.
Yes, the Adversity Advantage Podcast. And the reason it is titled that is
because I used adversity to my advantage when I was in jail.
Yeah. So your story is wild, which I now, I say, my viewpoint on prison, jail, all just criminal justice has completely changed. I say when you get slapped in the face with it, you start to educate yourself and your whole viewpoint changes, which is awesome because I think especially with your story, it's kind of something that I've spoken about. I don't know if I've spoken about it before, but when I look at criminal justice and I obviously look at being a Christian and my viewpoints, and you see so many people who are so harsh when it comes to criminal justice, and it's like, oh, throw them in for life or put them to death, and I'm like, that's not a Christian viewpoint because when you do those things, you're sitting here saying you don't believe in redemption. And I believe that redemption should be part of our criminal justice system. And I think your story kind of shows full circle that redemption process throughout. And so what was it first off, how long ago were you in jail?
A little over 15 years ago.
For how long?
So my sentence was originally 5 years, but the judge suspended everything but 90 days. And part of the deal was if I completed the 5 years of probation and the community service and everything else that he gave me, that he would take the felony conviction off my record at the end of the 5 years of probation,
that's amazing. The fact that a judge can even do that is awesome. And I love that judge's point of view because I have always said, there are other countries that you serve your time and your record is wiped clean because you've been punished for what you did. So I love the fact that they can actually do that.
Yeah. And I think at the end of the day, my story is just super unique because when I went to court, I was 20. Mm-hmm. The judge just looked at me and he's like, listen, this felony conviction is going to haunt you for the rest of your life. And maybe he saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. But at the time, I didn't think I was going to live to see my 25th birthday because I was a full-blown drug addict, selling drugs, the whole 9 yards, 21 jobs by the time I was 21, damaged relationships, trauma, severe mental health issues. So the odds of me making it out, a better person, alive, whatever, out of, the situation I was in, the odds were slim to none given my track record.
Yeah, I want to say you said at one point, I don't know if it was a conversation between you and I or what, but you said your viewpoint at that time was oh, okay, 90 days, great. I probably won't you really didn't know if you were going to be alive at the end or at the end of that 5 years or at the end of whatever it may have been, right?
Yeah, because I had gone to several of my friends' funerals up until that point in my life. And not just people that were Facebook friends or people that I was acquaintances with, people in my friend group for substance-related deaths. And then as well as the fact that I was, like I said, a full-blown drug addict, I was like, there's no way I'm going to be able to change my life. There's no way I'm going to be able to stop using drugs when I'm not in jail. There's no way I'm going to be able to change my life. There's no way it's going to happen. But thankfully, I had this massive wake-up call from my cellmate that essentially forced me to change my life when I was in jail. And so when you were in jail, because a lot of people that listen, now they compare a lot of things to my parents' stuff, and they're you were actually in a cell. I was in a cell. I was in a detention center.
Okay.
And it was different. It's like people would go there if they were doing shorter sentences. I forget the exact cutoff. I don't know if it was like less than a year, or they were going there because they were awaiting trial.
Yeah.
Because you don't go to prison until you're, like a state prison until you're convicted, right? But I just noticed a lot of the people were just in there just trying to do their time, get out. Like, you're not in there with a bunch of people that you think you would. It's not like a bunch of super scary people like some of the people may think, right? It's just normal people who made some mistakes and just trying to do their time. And I had no inclination or motivation of changing when I got in there. First thing I had to do was I detoxed cold turkey from Oxycontin for a few weeks. And
so, because your issue was obviously drugs.
Right.
So was it anything in particular, or was it just like whatever you could get your hands on?
It was Oxycontin was what my main thing was. I mean, it started out with me smoking weed to like deal with my problems and numb the pain. And that led to other addictions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I am a huge proponent, and I have people all the time will be like, no, that's not true. That's not true. I firmly believe that weed is a gateway drug.
Yeah, I mean, I've come to realize that as well, just because of what it does to your brain, because it gets you used to.
Thank you, Dr. Amen. Like he even says like sugar and alcohol are like just as bad, and I'm like, oh well, there's blind eye to that, but yeah, the weed. I'm like, and I'm not saying obviously like if you are, you have a medical condition, or you like if you're being prescribed that for pain or what, that's totally different. But if you're just like a teenager thinking, oh, it's cool for me to go out here and smoke weed, you build a tolerance to it. And it's like, all right, well, then it takes you more to get high and more and more. And then you're just like, shoot, I want to get high quicker. And it always leads to something more, in my opinion.
It's like a dog chasing its own tail. Like you never get the original rush you got when you first started using something.
Yep.
And that's what happened with me, where I felt this massive weight come off my back when I first started smoking weed. And then I built up enough of a tolerance to it that weight slowly started to build back up and up and up. And I had to find other things to help me escape from the reality of life. And eventually painkillers, Oxycontin was what really brought me to my knees. My habit was so bad that I was snorting hundreds of milligrams up my nose every single day. Part of my left nostril was missing. I had to snort a couple pills every single day just to get out of bed. My life was just completely out of control.
But what led you to that point?
I just think like my inability to deal with life. Like my parents got divorced when I was 5. It was a pretty rough divorce. They didn't talk to each other a lot. It was at a time where the divorce rate, I don't think was as high as it is today. I was the only kid in my friend group whose parents were divorced. So I started to develop this what's wrong with me mentality. And then on top of that, I was bullied a lot in school. People told me that I looked like I had Down syndrome as a kid. And
that is awful. Kids are so mean.
Yeah, and I started to internalize it because I didn't have any luck with girls in school. I wasn't good at sports, even though I love sports. So I started to think to myself, like, is there something wrong with me? Like, I'm being picked on for no reason.
Yeah.
I have no luck with girls. I'm not making the sports teams. Like, is there something inherently wrong with me? And I started to develop that identity that I was just going to be destined for failure. And so in order to deal with the toughness of life at that time, I did what I could to numb and check out. And that's what drugs did. That's what it was.
Looking back, was there anything anyone could have done to kind of get you on the right path? Or
I don't know.
I think for parents listening,
I get asked this a lot, and it's like, and people will ask me the same question, and I'm like, I don't know, because the personal development self-help answer is to say, don't worry about what other people are saying to you. That's more of a reflection about them than it is about you. But it's like, does a 10-year-old really want to hear that?
No.
Does an 11-year-old really? They just want to be happy. They want to be able to fit in with their friend group. They want to be able to hang out with, girls. They want to be able to like play sports and do all the things. And it's like, as a kid, I was so miserable that I was convinced that if I had a lamp and it gave me 3 wishes, that I could do whatever I wanted with these wishes. But the only thing is, if I got the wishes, I could never do drugs. Those 3 things were to give me a pretty girlfriend, to be like super ripped and jacked and to be successful. And I got all those things in my 20s and I was still miserable because I hadn't like worked on myself internally and I was chasing these things for the wrong reasons. So I share that because it's like, I don't know, because that's what I thought I wanted. And then I got those things in my 20s. And then I just was like, well, this isn't all it's cracked up to be, because I'm still miserable, just in a different way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
When it comes to my wardrobe, everyone's always asking, where did I get this or that? Who picked it out? Who dresses me? And believe it or not, I do not have an everyday stylist because, let's face it, that's not realistic. And second, I have come to love Stitch Fix. Stitch Fix sends styles so good you can feel it. They deliver all the confidence that comes from a truly amazing outfit without any of the work. With Stitch Fix, you actually get a stylist who understands your style, size, and budget, and they do all the shopping for you. It's the easiest way to transform your wardrobe this season. I know for me, the stylist I got helps to take my wardrobe to the next level. She knows what works for me, sometimes even better than I do myself. She helps me discover new things about my style. It's kind of like my stylish best friend is shopping with me. You know, that confidence boost you get when you really put on an amazing outfit? That's what I get from Stitch Fix. When I look good, I feel good, and it shows. I'm a firm believer that you have to feel good in what you wear. If you don't, it's not the outfit for you. With Stitch Fix, I just give my stylist my size, style, and budget preferences. I order boxes when I want and how I want, no subscription required, and she sends 5 just for me pieces, plus outfit recommendations and pro styling tips. I keep what I love and send back the rest. Stitch Fix makes it all so easy. I get outfits that make me look and feel really good, and I don't have to shop. If you don't love something, you just send it back. Shipping, returns, and exchanges are always free. Style that makes you feel as you look. Get started today at stitchfix.com/unlocked. That's stitchfix.com/unlocked. This episode of Unlocked is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Most of you listening right now are probably multitasking. Yep, while you're listening to me talk, you're probably also driving, cleaning, exercising, or maybe even grocery shopping. But if you're not in some kind of moving vehicle, there's something else you can be doing right now. Getting an auto quote from Progressive Insurance. It's easy, and you could save money by doing it right from your phone. Drivers who save by switching to Progressive save nearly $750 on average, and auto customers qualify for an average of 7 discounts. Discounts for having multiple vehicles on your policy, being a homeowner, and more. So just like your favorite podcast, Progressive will be with you 24/7, 365 days a year, so you're protected no matter what. Multitask right now. Quote your car insurance at progressive.com to join the over 28 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates, national average 12-month savings of $744 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June of 2022 and May of 2023. Potential savings will vary. Discounts not available in all states and situations.
So what was it that led you to prison? Like or jail? I just corrected myself because I always tell people all the time, I'm like, jail and prison are 2 different things. Yeah. But what were you charged with?
So I was Cinco de Mayo of 2008. I was riding around with a few of my friends to make a drug deal. Because at the time I was selling a bunch of weed to make money, to support my drug habit, and to feel cool. Because that was like one of the things about selling drugs was I got addicted to the validation that it gave me.
Well, and people needed you.
Exactly. I felt needed. I felt wanted. I felt this crazy sense of power when I would have all these missed calls on my phone and text messages because I knew that people needed me for something, and it filled that void inside that I didn't feel loved and I was unlovable and all those things. And so Cinco de Mayo 2008, I'm riding around, have a half a pound of pot in my trunk, a couple $1,000s in cash in the glove box, I have a scale, heading to make a drug deal, and I had a busted headlight that I'd been meaning to fix. But of course, like when you're in the thick of addiction, you don't care about anything else that doesn't revolve around addiction.
Yeah.
So when people were like, hey, you should change your headlight, I'm like, that's not going to help me get high, right? So I just didn't even do it. Cops running radar. I flashed my high beams at the cop, thinking that would mask the fact that I have a busted headlight, but really just gives him a reason to pull me over. Pulls me over. One thing leads to the next. I kind of stammer to get my license and registration out. I'm panicking like crazy. I already like knew in the back of my mind, I'm like, my life is definitely over. And cop pulls me out of the car, searches it, finds everything. I'm in the back of his cop car in handcuffs. And it was in that moment, like everything kind of came to a head for me, where I was just thinking to myself, like, how did I get here? How did the kid who just wanted to be loved, how did the kid who just wanted to be good at sports, how did the kid who just wanted to fit in, like, how did this kid get into the back of a police officer's car facing felony drug charges? And a lot of it
back in 2008, this was not, weed was a big deal.
It was.
Like, it's not like it is now.
No, it's not. And like, I look back now, and it was my inability to manage life. That's how I got there. It was like a compilation of all of my choices just stacked and stacked and stacked on top of each other. And I thought that was it right there. Got taken to jail that night, booked, charged with the possession with marijuana with the intent to distribute, which was a felony. And then ended up getting bailed out the next day by my dad, and then went to court a few months later, September of 2008. And that's when the judge, in my mind, I thought threw the book at me, because
I am shocked, especially back in 2008. Like that, I would love to have a discussion with your judge, just because I believe that, was it a man?
it was a guy, yeah.
Okay. I believe that what he did, like, I believe, sure, you do something wrong, I believe there should be law and order. There's law and order for a reason.
Sure.
But you don't just throw the book at someone and ruin the rest of their life, and you give them a second chance. And I feel like that's what he did in your case.
He did. And it's like, it was easy for me to feel like he wasn't, because at the time I was like, I'm going to jail. Like, where's the deal in all of this? Because I was so unathletic. I was 50 pounds heavier than I am now. I was timid. I was scared. I was shy. I was like, I'm going to get beat up in jail. Like, all my worst fears were like living in my mind constantly, because I was like, I'm going to be the guy that just gets messed with the whole time, because I was messed with all my life as a kid.
Yeah.
And I was like, now I'm going to go into a place where everybody's emotions are, unstable, right?
Yeah.
And people are upset and all these things. Like, what's going to stop somebody from messing with me?
Yeah. And so when you got there, well, first off, what was your dad's reaction when he bailed you out?
I think he was upset. My dad and I had a rocky relationship growing up.
Okay.
So his reaction was kind of expected. Like, he was super upset. Everybody was disappointed in me, of course. And it was tough, because I never felt comfortable to really open up and talk about like what was really going on if you started to peel the onion back, because I was struggling.
Well, see, and that's the thing, is it's not to say, for people that think like being a parent, that parents, for some reason, we all have this viewpoint of like, parents should be superheroes. Like, they don't do anything wrong. They shouldn't do anything wrong. They should do everything perfect. But then I feel like the older you get, you realize that like, it's all trial and error. It's all like, they did the best they could at the time with what they knew, or the tools that they had, or whatever it may be. But that relationship with a parent kind of dictates the rest of your life.
It does.
For sure. And so that's what's so difficult, is because I think it's so hard as adults. I've had this conversation with people, if it's like, we're all so afraid to say like, hey, what you did like really effed me up.
Right.
Like, there's this level of guilt or shame around it that you're like, all right, I can't say this in fear of hurting them. But I think it's okay to normalize like, hey, what you did, like, it really caused me to have these issues or those issues. And that's what I don't feel like we've gotten to that place yet. And that's the only way that you break these like generational curses, is to hit it head on and be like, yeah, that really caused me to have abandonment issues, or like, I feel like I can't communicate properly, or whatever it may be. And so I feel like, unfortunately, our parents play a huge role in the trajectory of our life.
Yeah, and I think you have to get to a place where you're like out of the weeds of like addiction or whatever mistake you made, or whatever the chaos was, to be able to have that conversation. Because a lot of times people, especially like when they're coming out of, coming out of a choice that they made that they didn't necessarily want to do, that somebody's disappointed in them, it's easy to quickly point the finger and say, it's because of you I did this, it's because of you. And I think once you can have some time and some distance with that event or the situation and yourself to say, okay, now I have some self-awareness around what went wrong, what went right, or whatever, and being able to have that mature conversation. That's what happened with me and my mom. Like, my mom kicked me out of her house when I was 16. I haven't lived with my mom since, because she busted me with a little bit of weed. A few weeks before that, I had a party while she was in the hospital. Like, things were bad between my mom and I. We hardly spoke for years. And we worked on a relationship slowly but surely. I was working hard to change my life. She was, doing her thing. And it got to a place where we were having dinner one night, and it was a conversation that really helped, shape our relationship in the way it is today. And she said, is there anything that you wish I would have done differently? And I just
and that takes a lot for a parent to say. Yeah.
And I just said to her, I was like, I just wish you would have asked me why. Like, why I was doing all that stuff, because I was really hurting and in a lot of pain emotionally, and I didn't know what to do. Like, I would come home from school some days and just cry because I was so mortified, and I didn't understand, because I wasn't I'm not rationalizing bullying of any kind or people being picked on, but I could understand why somebody would get picked on if they were like constantly a jerk to other kids.
Like, you had no reason.
Yeah, I had no reason for being picked on. I couldn't understand what was going on.
Yeah. And that's what I think the why is so important in every relationship in life. It's so easy to just kind of skate past it and say, oh, it just is what it is, whatever it may be. But like, the why is so important. Like, why you feel this way, why you did what you did, why, because if you know the why, it helps you to better understand who a person is. And I think too, especially now with like raising two kids at 17 and 11, the why is so important. And that's why I'm such a proponent for therapy, because I believe that like kids need to learn at such a young age. Like, Chloe's been in therapy since she was 3-4 years old, I think. But she knows how to communicate her feelings and the feelings of it's okay to not be okay. It's okay. And I think we've done a great job at normalizing it, mental health, but we still have such a long way to go. And I love though the why part of it, though, because in your mind, like, if you would have just asked me why, I could have said it, we could have talked about it. And then,
but there's so many layers, I think, for somebody to go through in order to get to that place. Like when I got out of jail, I had to focus on my life. I had to focus on bettering my habits, bettering my behaviors, really like figuring out what I was going to do, how I was like going to rebuild trust within myself, rebuild trust with my family. Then there was the forgiveness aspect, which I think is the hardest thing
by far.
When you feel somebody wrongs you in your childhood, right? And me becoming a Christian really helped that, because it's just completely, I don't even know how to describe it, but I mentioned that I had attention from pretty girls in my 20s. I was ripped, successful, and I still wasn't happy. I trained a pastor at a non-denominational Christian church who would beg me to come to church with him for like forever. And I was like, I don't belong there. Like, I'm going to hell. Because I thought that, like, I grew up old school, in an old school religious like setting where I knew if you were good, you go to heaven. If you're bad, you go to hell. And I'm like, well, I'm on the highway to hell. So what's the point of even trying to change? And then I was like, if God is real and God's about love, like, why is all this messed up stuff happening to me? And I was still caught up in that victim mindset. And so when my life was kind of falling apart emotionally in my 20s, I finally like just raised my hand and just told my client, I said, hey man, I think I'm ready to give this Jesus thing a try. And when I told him that, his reaction was like, I just told him he won the lottery. I was like, why is this guy so happy? I was like, I don't understand. And so I ended up going to church,
that's amazing,
giving my life to Jesus. And I felt that same weight that came off my back when I started getting high came off again. And I started crying, just no reason. And called my mom, told her I was sorry for like the first time in my life, like authentically. And that really helped me make peace with my past, because I started to realize, even though I wasn't proud of the choices that I made, or I wasn't happy with the way I was treated as a kid, God was, because he's now used them to completely heal me and transform me. and using me as a vessel to help other people. And once I came to terms with that, it was like game over. So like my relationship with Jesus and God isn't like I just go to church, put money in a basket, and just call it a day.
Yeah.
It's a relationship.
It's a relationship, and it's work, and you have to, it's just like with your girlfriend, boyfriend, spouse, whatever it may be, like you have to have date nights. You have to, like, you got to put in work. And it's the same thing when you have a relationship with Jesus Christ. And it's one of those things where it's like religion can cause so much hurt and harm, and there can be so much trauma surrounding it just because, like you said, like the very traditional way is like you screw up, you're going to hell, you're great, you're going, like that can cause so much trauma. But whenever you actually look into it and you look at what the Bible says and you look, like you said, really, it's just about loving people and loving people well. And that's the biggest thing. And even I've said this, like as a child, when it's hard, like you're like, all right, God, if you're real, like you wouldn't allow this, and this to happen. But then the older I became and the stronger my relationship got, there was a time to where I was like, you know what? It was like this push and pull kind of, because part of me was like, I don't want this really strong relationship with God, because if I have it, then that means that like all these people that have done wrong to me, like they're forgiven too.
Right.
You know, so in my mind, I was so just like not wanting that relationship, because I was like, nope, if I have that, then that means that like they don't have to be held accountable and they're forgiven, because if I'm forgiven, they're, you know, so you like find all these justifications as to why you don't have that relationship. But then I think you finally get to a point, and I always reference the movie God's Not Dead, and the way that the movie ends and how this professor is laying on the street dying, and like the whole time he was like, God's not real, God's not real. And then he was like, gives his life to Jesus, like right before he dies. And guess what? He's going to heaven.
Right.
He's forgiven for everything. And I think that for me, it just goes back to redemption. And if you believe in God, you believe that there is redemption. You believe there's times and places. And he says he'll leave the 99 for the one. Like, and those are the things that I'm like, all right, instead of justifying why I don't want that relationship or why this person should be held accountable, like give it all up, like give it up to God and let that be the final say. And I feel like there's peace when that's done.
I know we're in Nashville and it's a city that's moved by music. Like one of the things that changed me was that song, I Can Only Imagine by Mercy Me.
Yep.
And I just remember like listening to that song when I first became a Christian and just thinking about what life was going to be like when I got to heaven. And I just saw God, and I got to like just talk to him about my life and how much my perspective on that changed, to where if you'd asked me, you know, before I was a Christian, I would have told him that I hated my life and that I was angry and I felt sorry for myself and that I was a piece of crap. And then now I look at it in a way where I just think he'll be super proud of everything that I've been able to accomplish with obviously the help of him, and just being okay with a lot of my trials and tribulations, because I know that I learn every time that something doesn't go my way.
Exactly.
And that's just what I think it's about. Like, and also that life's just not about me, because I thought when I got out of jail and I changed my life, that it was all about Doug Bopst. It was all about me. But then when I became a Christian, I realized like there was a guy who helped me get into fitness when I was in jail, and that saved my life. And now
that's what I was going to ask, because you went in as a drug dealer and a user and all these things. And you said you were there 90 days,
right? And
your cellmate changed the trajectory of the rest of your life in a way.
He did.
So what was that?
So my cellmate was sitting there at the Scrabble table playing Scrabble when I walked in, and he looked at me, and he was like a more jacked version of Brad Pitt from Fight Club, and he was like, "Oh, hey,
I'll get his number."
Yeah, he passed away like a year ago, but has it been a year or 2 years? I forget. I think it was last year he passed away, last February. But anyway, he had said to me, he's like, "Hey, when you get through your opiate detox, you're going to start working out with me." I was like, me? There's no way. Like, I could have been a model for Pillsbury at the time. Like, there's no way I'm working out with this guy. And so I see him work out. He's doing all these push-ups, pull-ups. I was like, man, this guy's insanely jacked. And I wanted that. Like I said, I wanted as a kid to be in shape. I wanted to be ripped. So we're having a conversation in the cell not too long after that. And he's asking me why I'm in jail. And I start blaming my parents, start blaming the girl, start blaming the sports teams that didn't pick me, all the things. And he's like, quit being a victim. And I was just like, well, what do you mean? He's like, you're blaming everybody for your problems but yourself. He's like, there's plenty of people that went through what you went through that aren't in jail, right, Doug? And I'm like, yep. He's like, you have two choices. Be a man, look yourself in the mirror, take full responsibility for yourself, and say you chose to get yourself here. And it's up to you to get yourself out. No one's coming to save you. Or go be a victim and cry in the corner and blame everybody else for your problems. He's like, most people will do that. And I felt empowered for like the first time in a very long time.
Yeah.
And it inspired me to work out with him and give exercise a try. And when I got down to do a push-up, couldn't do a single push-up, could barely walk up and down the steps. And with his motivation and encouragement, training me every single day during my sentence there, during my sentence, I was able to do a set of 10 push-ups and run a mile. And it completely transformed my life. I finally developed self-discipline. I finally got to the point where I was able to get comfortable being uncomfortable. I was finally able to like walk with a sense of confidence and swagger. I changed the way I talked to myself. I just felt like peace that I could actually battle my mind and the emotions and everything that I had trouble with before. And it completely, reshaped my life forever. The day I got out of jail, I cried. I cried the day I went in, and I cried the day I didn't want to. I cried the day I went in because I didn't want to go in. I cried the day I left because I didn't want to leave. And he gave me a workout plan.
And people are gonna hear that and be like, "What? How could that be?"
Well, I felt safe. I felt like there was. I mean, as much as I know your experience, it's like different, but I felt like I wasn't gonna hurt myself or do anything to worsen my situation.
Because you were very confined.
I was confined. I had structure, and I had this guy in my life for the first time that I felt like, outside of like my grandparents, like showed me unconditional love. And I had never had that. This guy that believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. This guy that really wanted to help me. Which to this day, I can't figure out like why out of all the people, he picked me. But he gave me a work,
God.
and that's what, as I was able to connect the dots backwards, I was like, there's no way I orchestrated this on my own. God definitely did this, right? It's like that footprints in the sand like poem, right? And so my cellmate gave me a workout plan the day I left that I still have framed in my place today, so I never forget where I came from.
Wow.
Asked him how I could repay him, and he said, just don't mess up and pay it forward. And that's what was the catalyst for me continuing on the fitness journey, losing a bunch of weight, becoming a personal trainer to help other people, and then from there being inspired to share my story.
That's amazing. So when you got out, what was the process? Obviously you were on probation. Was it tough for you? Was it tough for you to get a job when you got out?
Yeah.
That's what people don't realize, is because at this time you were a felon. Now your record is clean.
Right.
But it took 5 years for that to happen.
It took months for me to get a job because I didn't have a college degree, which hurts you to get a job for one thing. And I had some experience in community college, but I never got a degree. So I essentially just had my high school diploma, and then I'm a convicted felon. So I just had to take whatever job that I could get. Ended up getting a job at a liquor store because you have to check the box. Like, have you ever been convicted of a felon? This liquor store gave me a shot. And it was just this crazy change because I had learned how to develop discipline when I was in jail and fitness. So I always encourage people to work out because of all the stuff it teaches you.
Yeah.
I showed up early to this job. I stayed late, worked my way up to becoming, like a supervisor at the liquor store. And it was the first time in my life that I actually gave a crap about where I worked. Because before, I quit or got fired from every other job that I had. And so I just put in the work there, built some confidence, built some like work ethic in a professional setting. And then I started to think to myself, like, fitness is really having this crazy impact on my life, emotionally, mentally, physically. I wonder if I could help other people do this. And so that led to me wanting to become a personal trainer. And when I became a trainer, this is where the process kind of got a little tricky because I applied for a job at this place called the Maryland Athletic Club. And I aced the interview. They were immediately ready to hire me. But the manager was like, is there anything else you'd like me to know? I'm like, yeah, I'm a convicted felon. But I said, and this is what I think, people are always like, well, what's your advice? Yeah. I said, listen, like, I don't have a magic wand to fix any kind of criminal justice stuff. What I will say is you have to have this whatever it takes mentality. And that's what I did. I just said, listen,
yeah,
I know I have a dark past. I said, but I'll do whatever it takes to get this job. I'll pee in a cup every day. Here's my probation information. Here's my court documents. I'll do whatever it takes. Just hire me and just give me a chance. And so after going back and forth with HR and them getting my documents and stuff, they gave me a shot, and I just took it and I ran with it, and just things started to happen naturally where I found this new passion and high for helping other people, because I had been there. I had been the guy that hated who I saw in the mirror. I had been the person that was nervous about like shopping for bigger clothes. I'd been the guy that just was insecure about being around my friends because I was always the one that was, a little heavier or whatever. I'd been that person. So I was able to connect with my clients on a completely different level. And then I became the most successful trainer in my first full year in the history of the company. And I say that not to brag, but just to show what you can do.
What you can do when you put your mind to it.
When you put your mind to it.
What did you call it? The what mentality?
The whatever it takes.
The whatever it takes mentality. That is so true, because I feel like that's kind of the mindset I'm in right now, even with all the criminal justice stuff. Like whatever it takes, because people don't realize how much it's needed, how much, how hard it is for these men and women when they get out, and when it's almost impossible. Like there are states where you can't even be a hairdresser if you're a convicted felon.
That's wild.
Like it's insane, all the different parameters that are around it. And that is awesome. The whatever it takes mentality. That is.
And then I get into a career where, I had a broken relationship with my parents growing up, but I get into a career where now I'm training successful people in the business world, lawyers, financial people, like all these moms, dads, all these people that are able to help pave the way for me of like how to be successful in different areas of my life. Like I wanted to know like, hey, how can I be like, I wanted to be like the guy who was able to show up at his kids' games whenever he wanted to and having a happy marriage and like being successful and doing all the things. So I would just like ask them what they did. And so I started to implement certain things like investing money early and saving money. And I would just talk to them about like how to live life, or even with my legal stuff, when my probation was up and I completed all the stipulations that the judge gave me, I had an attorney who helped me craft a letter to the judge and ended up, and this is crazy. This was like the first sign I knew God was real, was the day I went to court to get the felony conviction off of my, because originally what happened was I went to court, he took the conviction off my record, gave me probation before judgment, which essentially was the same thing, where I was no longer a convicted felon. That day, I was on the front page of the health and fitness section for the newspaper for a story they had done about me training some college kids when they were home from school, like that. And so
wow.
and then
it was kind of like one part of your life, like you were set free, and then this.
And my lawyer was like, Your Honor, look, he says it's proof that he's changed his life, like showing him the front page of the paper. And he's like, and the judge said something, I forget exactly what he said, but he's like, I've seen some stuff. I don't know how you pulled this one off, like thinking, it was a joke.
That is amazing.
But it was cool, like, and I think the judge said something like, this is what it's been meaningful to see, like, this is how the judicial system in a way is supposed to work. Right. And that I learned my lesson, went in there and, and there's no, at least there's not formal rehabilitation in there, but I guess I chose to help rehab myself when I was in there to help my cellmate.
But also you had a judge who was very lenient, and it's so tough though, because the argument against the leniency is, if I'm so lenient, then they're not going to know the true ramifications of their actions. So there's like, you can have that argument, or the leniency could give you your second chance of like, well, I don't want to mess up because next time it could be worse. Right. And there's one, I want to pull it up and play it. It's a Nick Saban interview, because it kind of speaks to exactly what we're saying right now.
I'll say, like, I think a lot of times it's easy to point the finger at something in your past and then use that as an excuse to not achieve certain things or to behave a certain way.
Yeah.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. I don't know about you guys, but I firmly believe that the relationship that you have with yourself is the most important relationship you will have in your entire life. I know for me, my relationships with others aren't as strong as they should be when the relationship with myself isn't where it needs to be. And that's really where I've had to take a step back and look at myself in the mirror and say, like, hey, I need help. I'm not okay. I need to fix this or work on this. A common misconception about relationships is they have to be easy to be right. But sometimes the best ones happen when both people put in the work to make them great. Even if it's you putting in the work for you or you putting in the work with your partner and vice versa. I believe that relationships are hard. They're tough. And the honeymoon phase, let's face it, I would rather do all the hard work at the beginning of a relationship than wait till after I get married and then do the hard work. Putting in the hard work is tough. And that's why therapy can be a place to work through the challenges you face in all your relationships, whether with friends, work, your significant other, anyone. I am a huge advocate for therapy in our household. I mean, it is an absolute must. And the reason being is because I truly believe it sets us up for success, not only with others, but with ourselves. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapist at any time for no additional charge. Become your own soulmate, whether you're looking for one or not. Visit betterhelp.com/Savannah today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Savannah.
Oh, yep. It's right here.
Found it.
So and this is like, in a way, this is what I feel like your judge did. And I just believe if we gave more grace and we did, I'll just let it speak for itself.
Where do you want him to be? You want him to be in the street? Or do you want him to be here graduating? You know, when I was over there at the Nagurski, Muhsin Muhammad, who played 15 years for the Carolina Panthers, played for me at Michigan State. Everybody in the school, every newspaper guy, everybody was killing a guy because he got in trouble and said there's no way he should be on our team. I didn't kick him off the team. I suspended him. I made him do stuff. He graduated from Michigan State. He played 15 years in the league. All right, he's a president of a company now. And he has 7 children, and his oldest daughter goes to Princeton. So who was right? I feel strong about this now, really strong. All right, about all the criticism out there of every guy that's 19 years old that makes a mistake, and you all kill him. And then some people won't stand up for him. So my question to you is, where do you want him to be?
That's wild. It's so true.
Yeah. It's when I heard that, I was like, wow. Like, how many times do we just throw people away? Do we just look at their actions and throw them away and say, you screwed up, you deserve to suffer, instead of saying, you know what, like, what you did was really crappy, but let's fix it. Let's learn from it. Let's grow from it. Let's invest in people. But instead of investing in people, we just throw them away. And I feel like that's in every aspect of life, whether it's in a relationship. You can always get a new one. I mean, with social media these days, you can find one in 30 seconds. But like in relationships, with jobs, it's so easy to say, you messed up, so I'm done. And it's so saddening to me, especially in our justice system. A lot of times, 95% of the time, that's how it is. Like, you know what, I'm going to punish you. Instead of, hey, what you did's wrong. These are some consequences you're going to suffer, but let's be better.
Yeah, because I think a lot of times people assume that they're just going to go in there and they're going to think about their problems and they're not going to do it again. But really, you have to equip them with the tools to be able to learn how to become better when they get out. And it's like, I think we just live in this world of extremes now where it's like you have one side
it's all or
like,
nothing.
it's like lock them up. And then the other side, it's like no accountability. And there's so much nuance to it, right?
Yes.
And that's what I think those are the conversations we have to have. It's like, okay, how can we help hold people accountable, have law and order, obviously, while also rehabilitating these people so that they come out of these situations, or they're equipped to come out of these situations as a better version of themselves. Because that's the goal, right? The reason that I think people go behind bars is because people feel that they're a threat to society in some way, or they did something to break the law.
Yeah.
So I think the goal should be, okay, like, let's figure out a way to help them while they're, spending some time behind bars or whatever the example is, so that they can come out and they're like, oh, like, I want to be a better version of myself now because of what I've learned when I was away.
Yeah, that is so true. And I think you are a perfect example and image of what redemption and second chances and all of these things look like. And I'm like, all right, let's look at you. This is it. It's possible. It's possible to come from the lowest of lows to the highest of highs. And so what would be your one piece of advice to people listening that are just like maybe comfortable in their dysfunction, or, they're afraid to get out of their dysfunction. They're afraid to be better.
I think you either choose to change or life will choose change for you. And you have to ask yourself, like, what do you want in life? Like, where does this lead? Like, if you continue to make these choices, like, where do you end up? And because I think at the end of the day, like, making a change is hard. Like when you're in dysfunction, when you got addiction, when you're trying to lose weight, or whatever the example is where a change can be challenging, it's tough. It takes sacrifice, takes grit, takes getting super uncomfortable, it takes vulnerability, it takes just continuing to show up for yourself even if you don't want to. It takes all those things. But what also is incredibly hard, worse than that, is not changing. And then your life getting worse because of it, or you're living with regret because you're like, you know what, I should have changed years ago. So if somebody's like listening to this or they're watching this and they feel like they're stuck, I think the first step is to just have acceptance on that and be like, all right, I accept that I'm here. And then like figure out like a small step to take to get out of that.
Yeah, you have to appreciate the little wins and I feel like a lot of people look at life and they're like, all right, well, I want to get here. And you're down here, but you want to get here, and you're not proud of yourself until you get here. And that makes it almost impossible to get there because you have to take the little wins along the way. Like, you slowly have to appreciate and respect yourself for getting just a little bit further than you were yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about rebuilding confidence and rebuilding self-esteem. I think the biggest problem is people, like you said, they try to go from 0 to 100. They're like, I want to completely change my life in 24 hours. And it's like, your life doesn't get changed in 24 hours. Your life gets changed by compounding 24-hour days on top of each other and making the right choices every single day. Like that, whatever it takes mentality, I always recommend that, because if you want something bad enough, you'll do it. And what 100%. I say to people, what I did, this is what I did. It's like, the odds were so stacked against me to succeed that the only chance I had was to say, I'm not going to think about the failures. I'm not going to think about the noise. I'm not going to think about the negativity. I'm just going to do whatever it takes every single day, and doing the things that I know I need to do, exercise, the way I ate, who I spent time with, my thoughts, all the things. And then I'm going to do that to the fullest potential. And then if I do that, I know it gives me a shot to get better the next day. And then I do that again, and again, because I knew that if I did the other thing, if I looked at my failures, if I blamed other people for my past, if I was like, I'm not going to make it, then I would have counted myself out of the game.
Yeah.
I would have given up. But I knew I had to just stack these small wins. And then what happens is you start to stack these small wins, and these days you look back and like a week's gone by, 2 weeks have gone by, and you're like, wow, like I feel a little bit better because you're not, doing the same things that you were doing. You're taking care of yourself and all these things. And I think that's just what it takes. Like, everybody thinks that self-confidence is built by making some drastic decision.
No.
And revamping your
day by day by day.
It's like brick by brick.
Yes, 100%. That is awesome. That, I think, just hearing your story and everything. I am like so happy that I met you and got to see your story and hear it firsthand from you. And so where can people find you? follow you?
So the best place is just DougBopst.com is my website. On social media at Doug Bopst on all the channels. Okay. And then podcast is the Adversity Advantage podcast, and it's everywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, you name it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for having me on your podcast. And everyone, just follow along. I love hearing redemption stories and just how people got to where they're at. So go give them a follow. And till next week.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you.